Hello, Mandela class. Welcome to your third English lesson of the week. In the previous lesson, we looked at how to create more complex sentences using relative clauses. And today we're going to look at extending your sentence by using a subordinate clause. Can you remember what a main clause is? How do we know and how can we identify a main clause in a sentence? Well, just as a reminder, a main clause is a simple sentence that can stand alone, so it makes sense on its own. It includes a subject or a noun and a verb. For example, Ella works hard at school. What's the noun in this sentence? Ella. And what is Ella doing? She's working, she works hard, so that's the verb. Now, if I was to say to you, Ella works hard at school, would you understand what I'm saying? Yes, even though it's a simple sentence, it makes sense. A subordinate clause cannot stand on its own, and it relies on the main clause in order to make sense. So if I was to say the subordinate clause to you on its own, you wouldn't understand what I'm talking about. It doesn't have enough information, as it just adds information linked to the main clause. You need to use one of these subordinating conjunctions to complete your subordinate clause. So read these with me. If, since, as, when, although, while, after, before, until, because. You can use any of these to add more information to a sentence to make a subordinate clause. So we can extend our sentence by adding, for example, the same main clause. We could use Ella works hard at school when there are no distractions. When is one of the subordinating conjunctions that I've used to add more information to Ella works hard at school. Now, just a reminder, the main clause makes sense on its own, and the subordinate clause does not make sense on its own. So if I was to say to you, Ella works hard at school, you would have an understanding of what I mean. But if I was to say, when there are no distractions, you wouldn't really know what's happening when there are no distractions. It doesn't give you enough information. So that's the subordinate clause. Subordinate clauses don't always have to be at the end of a sentence. They can also be in the beginning of a sentence. So we can start with the subordinate clause and then use a comma to separate it and then write the main clause. So, for example, instead of saying Ella works hard at school when there are no distractions, we could say when there are no distractions, comma, Ella works hard at school. Again, how could you identify which one is the main clause and which one is the subordinate clause? Pause the video and have a think. What do we know about the main clause that could help us identify it? Well, we know it's a simple sentence that makes sense on its own. So, Ella works hard at school makes sense on its own. Also, you could identify the subordinate clause by identifying the subordinating conjunction, which is when. That's my subordinating conjunction. So I know that this is my subordinate clause. So there's a way that you could find it easier to remember your subordinating conjunctions, which is to use the acronym I saw a Bob. Every letter of this acronym stands for one of the subordinating conjunctions which we looked at in the previous slide. I stands for if, saw stands for since, as, and when. A stands for although, because although starts with an A. And Wabob stands for while, which starts with a W. after, which starts with the A, before, until, and because. So if you're struggling to think of how you could extend your sentence in a different way, for example, if you've already used the word, the subordinating conjunction because, and you're trying to use something a little bit different, try to think of I saw a Bob. Here you can pause the video and just go over them just to see if you can remember what they stand for. Okay, now I'm going to show you some sentences and I'm going to ask you to use one of these subordinating conjunctions to make this sentence more complex and extend them. Extend the main clause. So the main clause here is Laura smiled. However simple it is, if I was to say to you Laura smiled, you would understand what I'm saying. So Laura smiled. Can you choose one of these subordinating conjunctions to add to extend this sentence? So Laura smiled, for example, when Laura smiled when she found out she was getting a pet. What sentence did you come up with? You can just tell me or say it in your head. Here's another example. Laura smiled because she was having fun. So here are two examples. I used when, and we used another example with because. How would you write this sentence by swapping where the subordinating conjunction is? It doesn't have to be at the end of a sentence. It could also be in the beginning of a sentence. But remember what it has to be separated with. If we put a subordinating conjunction in the beginning of a sentence, it's separated with a comma. Another example. My cat meowed at the front door. Which one of these subordinating conjunctions could you use to extend this sentence? My cat meowed at the front door. So for example, we could use the subordinating conjunction as my cat meowed at the front door as he wanted to be let in. What sentence did you come up with to add more information? Let's look at another example. Miss Amanpour said we could play outside. Which one of these subordinating conjunctions could you use? You could, for example, say, Miss Amanpour said we could play outside after we finished eating our lunch. Here's another example. Miss Amanpour said we could play outside when it had stopped raining. So here you've got two examples, one with after that I said to you, and one with when. Miss Gossage said we can listen to music. How could you extend this sentence? You could say, Miss Gossage said we can listen to music while we do our work. So we've used the subordinating conjunction while. Okay, now I want you to carefully choose an activity that is appropriate for you. So have a look at the activity. If you have a go at the first one, for example, this is activity 1, and you feel like it's challenging enough for you, carry on with this activity. If you feel like you would like a bit more of a challenge, then just choose activity 2 and see how you get on with that. So please just choose the activity that you feel is more appropriate for you. So activity 1 is to write out the sentences and just put one of these subordinating conjunctions that would make sense in this sentence. in the gap to complete your subordinate clause. So I will finish my homework, I eat my dinner. Which one of these subordinating conjunctions would make sense here? And carry on, do the same for the rest of them. Activity 2 is you need to fix my boring sentences by making them interesting. So you're going to add in a subordinate clause. You're going to choose a subordinating conjunction and add your own subordinate clause. So the main clause is given and you need to do the rest. And here's an extension. If you want an extra challenge, is to write your own sentences that include a subordinate clause. I'm going to challenge you a little bit more by saying that also write some sentences where the subordinate clause is in the beginning of the sentence rather than always being at the end of the sentence. I look forward to seeing all of your work on Tapestry, Mandela class, and well done for all the hard work. I will see you in the next video. Bye.